I'm getting used to talking by myself, or to a screen, or looking at my own image on a screen, and it's so wonderful to see real people, to hear live music, not on my headsets, and not with me singing. Have you ever sang with headsets on? My family goes outside when I sing. I sing loud. That last song is particularly beautiful to me. I have a very early memory of seeing Louis Armstrong and his orchestra, and he was actually with the Tex Beneke Orchestra, which is really the Glenn Miller Orchestra. So those are two things that I wanted to see, and I got to see them together, and he played the piano, and he was like the piano player, and then he also, of course, got up and played the horn, and it was just such a beautiful night, and they had front singers, so some of you remember front singers, and it would be like a front man or a front woman, and those were the men or the women who sang in front of these orchestras, and they sang all of these beautiful songs, and invariably in these groups, the front men and the front women are always like beautiful people, and the backup singers are always beautiful people and stuff. And at the end of this concert, Louis Armstrong got up, and he's just, first of all, he's just so disheveled and just sweating profusely, and he's got, he all night long he had like a kerchief, but now he had a towel. He was sweating so much, and so he got up and he sang that song, and this was like the encore, and the audience just went wild. And in that moment, it occurs to me that of all of the things that I saw, he was the most beautiful thing that I saw all night long. And so here was this very, very, very old man, just sweating and disheveled, and really, you could tell already that the diabetes was just racking his body and his ability to walk, and he never had a beautiful voice, and so you just saw him like pick up that mic, and then you heard like see, that he had that voice, and in the sense of what we think of as beautiful sounding, he did not have a beautiful voice. Everybody who sang that day had a more beautiful voice. But he had the most beautiful voice of anyone there that night. And we're going to talk this whole month about beauty. What does beauty mean to us? And not just what does it mean to us, but what does it actually even mean when we say something is beautiful? Beauty, beast. Why not beauty, beast? I see we have applause from the cheap seats out there. You see, beauty, and I think you're going to get reflections on this all month, is perception, right? Beauty is perception. And I'm going to go into that even more, but I want you to think of things we say, especially in the Western culture. We are a beauty culture. We are obsessed with beauty. We're obsessed with our own beauty, and we're obsessed with other people's perceptions of us as beautiful. We have phrases like beautiful people and she's a beaut, and we assess even our material objects as being beautiful, and we insist on them being beautiful. Beauty is a reflection of the culture and of the times. I'll say that again. Beauty is a reflection of the culture and of the times. It's a relative thing. As Westerners, as Hellenists, as Greco-Romans, as recovering Christians, we have this idea that there is a right thing, that there is this perfection, that there is this only one thing, that there is an ultimate, that ultimate sometimes is over here on the left and sometimes it's over there on the right, and we equate those things with beauty. We equate lots of things with beauty. We equate youth with beauty. So, anybody remember her name? Yeah. What's Belle going to look like at 96? Not as good as him. Or is she? I mean, in Europe, this is a digression, by the way. I do this a lot, if you know me in real life. I'm a paleontologist, and I'm an archaeologist. That's my degree. I've not made one penny from that degree. And if I talk about something paleontological or biological right now, I still won't have made a penny because I'm donating all my honorariums, as long as we're doing this, back to the church. And so, I just say that because that's a digression of a digression. I want you to think about that, all right? I want you to think about that as you go towards the offering section, but I also want you to think about the idea that as a paleontologist, as an archaeologist, as a scientist, I look at beauty in a totally different way, right? I look at it as a neurological phenomenon. We say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And when we're talking about physical, seeable beauty, it is a literal thing. It's not just a relative thing. Your brain tells you what is beautiful. And it is part nature, our own nature, and it is part nurture. We are taught to associate certain things with certain things, right? And I'll show you how it works. Our camera, by the way, is working right now. And this is my example of what nature does. Why? Because if I move over here, the camera follows me. If I move over here, the camera follows me. How does the camera know to follow me? I'm not wearing anything on me that says, I'm not wearing any kind of tracking device. The camera recognizes eyes. There is something in the program, in the software, that recognizes eyes. Your Facebook has this too. They can put up pictures from you from anywhere in the world, and Facebook will send that picture to you and say, "We saw you. Would you like to tag yourself?" Which is scary to me. A computer recognizes eyes. not only recognizes eyes, but recognizes my face. This is important to beauty because of this. When you were born and you opened up your eyes for the very first time, everything was just colors and shapes and chaos. And the first thing that your brain recognized, and it looked for it, it was pre-programmed to look for it, that when something came within your field of vision, which when you were a baby was only a few feet, the very first thing you recognize are eyes. Two eyes. You associated, this is the nurture part, those two eyes with warmth, with comfort, and food. Your first definition of beauty was probably, not always, but probably your mom. And that definition grew and grew and grew because you associate comfort and feeling with those eyes. And at some point, you start to also recognize sounds, and sounds turn into words. And words teach you to associate sound with feeling and feeling with concept. So comfort and food and warmth and safety become love. Eyes, feeling, love. You see that? We start making associations, and those associations grow. But it's not a perfect thing in the sense that we don't all learn the same things. So if I go to the Magdalenian culture 45,000 years ago, and they're all over Europe. They're from Iberia all the way to Anatolia, all the way up to Finland, all the way down into Africa. There is this singular culture that is spread out throughout the world, and while we don't know much about them, we do know that they used to carve these effigies, or these what we call fetishes, and people used to say, these are Venus figures. So the Venus of Montrose, the Venus of De Silo, the Venus of all kinds of cultures, what they call the Magdalenian cultures, all have these little statues that are as big as this, but also as small as this. And they all have giant hips, drooping breasts, and very often no head, or a very small head, or a point for a head. And as Westerners, as modern people, we assume that if you draw or paint or sculpt a woman, it must be a fertility object. Why? Because we're enculturated to believe that that is what women are and what women are for. But now the evidence suggests that 45,000 years ago, the reason that they made these figures were not for fertility objects, because it was probable. In fact, when we look at the bones and the health of young women of 45,000 years ago, that they were lean, that they were narrow-hipped, that they had strong muscles, that they were hunters and gatherers both. And who had giant hips, giant bellies, drooping breasts? Menopausal women did. grandmothers did. The objects of affection and beauty in a culture where everybody was thin and lean and young and strong were the ones who made it to menopause. Because in the bone record, in the archaeological record, most women died by the age of 30. If you made it to the age of 50, you were a very, very special person. Now, in our culture, we would say, well, she must have been wise and wonderful, which implies she must have been old and ugly and decrepit, but boy, did she have so much beauty inside of her. Do you see what we just did? We made her beautiful inside. But it is very likely, and we know this to be true because paleo cultures do the same thing to this day. They consider old, fat, droopy-breasted, big-bellied women as beautiful. Beautiful on the outside, not on the inside. We say beauty and beautiful. You ever say, put a picture on Facebook and somebody says, oh, you're so beautiful, inside and out. They have to add that. We put in these disclaimers, like, I don't want you to think I'm shallow, or I don't even want you to think I'm a creeper because I just said you're beautiful or something. I have to say inside and out. We are culturally created by our own hardwiring. So we have the software of culture and the hardware of our self to create ideas of beauty. What does that mean? You know, like when you sing, okay, you have a beautiful voice, by the way. When you sing, I see trees of green, red roses too, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Why? I see trees of purple and dead roses too. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Why do we do that? What is that thing that connects us to those things? And why does that matter? I think one of the things that matters is that the more we create narrow ideas of what beauty is, the more we create ideas of what beauty is not. What makes this story work is he's ugly. Beautiful, ugly. Beauty comes from the word bellatus. Bellatus means bell. Bell means I am attracted to you. It means I follow you. It means I want you. It's a misogynist word from a misogynist culture, which equates fertility and youth with beauty. Men too. When you say beau, that's the male version. That is a beautiful man. That is a virile man. That is a fertile man. And in Greco-Roman culture, beau also means a rich man of station. For men, we associate the ability to provide with beauty in men, which is why you always see a guy who is ugly as cuss with a beautiful young woman. That's a cultural stereotype, but it's a stereotype based upon our perceptions of what is good and what is bad and what is right and what is wrong. I dress funny. I wore this shirt here, and a woman walked up to me and she grabbed my hem and she just went, she literally, just a stranger walked up to me, pulled my hem down, and she got frustrated. And I'm staring at her, and she just looked up at me and she said, "This has been bugging me." What's bugging her? Do you see this? My hem is on the bias. It's diagonal. It's not straight. It goes from up to down. In Latin, we would say this is sinistra. It's sinister. It's not just not straight or not right. It's sinister. It's evil. What is not beautiful is not just ugly. It's evil. What is not symmetric and perfect is evil. What is not my beauty is evil. I am hardwired to look for people who look like me. I am hardwired to be attracted. But the software has been perverted, largely by Walt Disney, by the way, to believe that princesses have station and beauty, that they are above us, that they are the things that are desired, that the desire for princesses is the subject of many, many, many movies. And many, many fairy tales. We say things like ugly duckling. She was an ugly duckling, and then we realized that she was a swan. Why? Because swans are more beautiful than ducklings. Think about that. Why? And you'll tell me. You'll say, because they're tall. So are short birds ugly then? She's a long neck. So if you have a short neck, do you see what I'm talking about? The perception of beauty is based upon perception. And that perception is hardwired into us, but it's not. It's not the hardware that's the problem. It's the software. It is culture. It is religion. It is politics. I recently saw a convention, I won't say which one, but on a single night, I saw a tall, young, blonde woman after blonde woman after blonde woman wearing high heels, dressed in multi-$1,000 outfits, come up and speak for our nation. And I'm not really concerned too much about their politics, but I am concerned about the optics of showing our children that you need to be rich, powerful, young, articulate, and blonde. There is a broadcast network, I won't say a news network, that has about 50 women on a 24/7 journalistic broadcast schedule. And if you put all of their pictures together, 80% of them, of 100 women who appear on camera, are young and blonde. Now, the guys on this network, and on every network, let's be honest, are old and ugly as sin. Did you hear that phrase I just said? Ugly as sin. We're enculturated to understand that. We use these words. We enculturate ourselves. We have Disney princesses. Anybody like Shrek here? Okay, so everybody's like, yeah, I don't want anybody to see. Shrek is about an old, ugly ogre who falls in love with a beautiful princess who has a secret. She is an old, fat, ugly ogre too, and she's been cursed. But if you think that Fiona is beautiful, and you think Shrek is beautiful, the entire premise of the movie, of the fairy tale, falls apart. I don't have any answers for you today, because this is something we all have to work out for us, and we have all month to do it. We're going to talk, I'm sure, because we preachers, we all get together and we work this out. No, we don't. But there are cultural memes and tropes and norms, and we're going to talk about what we believe. We're going to talk about what the culture thinks is beautiful, and we're going to talk about what we, the spiritual people, the beautiful people, what we think of as beautiful. We're going to talk about beauty being skin deep, and we're going to talk about beauty being inside. And I want to just, before we get into this conversation, I want you to think about what you think about this. And how much of this is hardwired, and how much of this is software. Did you know, this is not a digression, by the way, did you know that there's a scientist who realized that in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, that Homer refers to the red wine ocean and the red sky. And he started to go into all these Greek writings, all this epic Greek poetry, and invariably, the sky is red and the sea is red. And then he started looking in biblical sources, and he started looking in all kinds of things from thousands of years ago. And nobody says the blue sky. Nobody says the blue water. Not till around 1000, what we used to say is AD, and now we would just say in the current era, because we changed the rules, that there was a time when people perceived the ocean to be red. And we know that in primitive animals, that the more an animal evolves, that the more rods and cones there are in their eyes to be able to see color. And that we evolve. We evolve over time, even over thousands of years, not millions of years, over thousands of years. And our ability to see color has been getting better and better and better and better. And at the time worse as well, because primitive animals can see red, but they can also see infrared. They can see heat. So on the spectrum of energy and color, some animals can see heat. What does that mean? It means they can see at night. Infrared light. I can't see the blue reflecting from the sky, not because it didn't exist back then, but because I don't have the idea, the literal ideation of the ability to see red. All the way over here, I can see blue. And not only can I see blue, but the Swedish studies of children who have been born in the 60s and beyond start to see that they have what is called rugose bone tissue. And that bone tissue is related to an organ that we all have. But young people have it more than us, and that's the pineal foramen. And that foramen is an eye that has an optic nerve that goes to the pineal gland. And what does that mean? Children who can see circadian rhythms of light and dark see the night sky not as black, but as indigo. They don't know that you don't see the same colors that they do. And more and more and more and more young people can see indigo. And because of that, they can see ultraviolet light, infrared light, ultraviolet light. Now, if you think about this in terms of our hardwiring, if we start to add values to those abilities, we start to see how color affects us. So I want to leave this with you. As we go and start to think about what is beautiful or not beautiful, how do we apply age to it? Ageism. How do we apply sex to it? Sexism. How do we apply race to it? Racism. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if we have to assume that beauty means there's ugly, what is it that we don't like? What is it that we don't want? Who is it that we don't follow? And how is it that that is something that we create for ourselves? I'd like everybody to close their eyes. Mark, would you come up and noodle a little bit of some Louis Armstrong for us? This is mood music. And as you close your eyes, I want you to think that what you're seeing right now is some people's reality. What would happen if you could not see how old somebody was, or how young somebody was, or how they matched culture's idea of what is beautiful? I have people who listen to my voice on recordings and radios and meet me, and my voice doesn't match what I look like. And somebody said, "You're so articulate," which if you're a black person, you know what that means. I want you to meditate on what is inside of you. The beauty and the wondrous nature of how you are built, of all the pieces of you, of how your physical and your metaphysical create who you are. And then I want you to think about how much of you assume that to be real is also colored, literally colored, by what you add to it. And how do we modify our software? Why do we have to say that Black Lives Matter? Obviously, everybody says all lives matter. But there's a problem. There's a glitch in the software. Why do we assume that a statue that has survived 100, 200,000 years must be a beautiful woman and must be our attraction to that woman and must be because she's fertile? There's a glitch in the software. And it's not them. It's us. We all have a glitch in the software. We all have been enculturated to be a certain way, to think a certain way, to feel a certain way. And so, eventually we have to open our eyes. But I want you to take this month, while the leaves are changing colors, while the leaves fall off, while the light in the sky changes because the angle that we are to the earth has changed, and it starts to create different temperatures in us that we associate with the end of summer, the good time, or the beginning of winter. And some of us perceive that to be the hard time, the bad time. It's not just what you see, it's what you feel. But I want you to just take this month to see what it means to have beauty be in the eyes, your eyes, of the beholder. You are the beholder. And what are you going to do with your eyes and your thoughts and your beliefs about beauty? Namaste. Thank you so much for being here.